How do you keep from overworking your portraits when you're painting someone you know and you just can't seem to get it to look like them? This is a common stumbling block for portrait painters of all levels, but it's especially frustrating when you want to paint loosely and expressively, and that's what I'm here to help you with today. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Chelsea, and I'm a full-time professional oil painter specializing in expressive portraits. Every week, I share a new video with you on how you can master your unique style of painting. If you enjoy this video today or you learn something helpful, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. And if you especially enjoy or learn from my content and you would like help achieving professional quality in your portraiture, I do offer mentorships designed to help you reach your big painting goals. For more information on that mentorship, you can check out the links in the description to find out more and apply to see if we are a fit to work together. All right, let's jump in. This week, I'm working on a painting that's really special to me. I started it at East Oak Studios Painting from Life session last week, and I honestly couldn't help but want to bring it home and keep working on it. And that's because I'm painting somebody who's special to me. Her name's Polina, and this week that we did this painting was her last week in the US before she went back home to Ukraine to be with her parents. And I'm going to really miss her, and I knew that I would just cherish this opportunity to get to paint her. And that was absolutely the case. In fact, embarking on this painting was really what I've been needing for a while. I've talked on my channel for some time about just not having a lot of creative inspiration through the winter months and feeling myself starting to get back into it. And this painting felt like such a wonderful jumpstart to that process. I was able to dive into this piece and get excited about it in a way that I honestly didn't anticipate. And I really credit that to its personal significance to me. And so I know this video today is going to be about looseness and likeness in portraiture, but if you've been feeling kind of stuck, I would really recommend that you spend some time painting something or someone really meaningful to you and finding a way to share that with them or sharing it with people who are important to you. In fact, painting with this group was yet another really meaningful jumpstart for me. It had been a while since I got to paint with other people, and I really missed it. So these are two things that I'm going to be keeping in mind for my own practice going forward. Reconnecting with specific subjects that have personal significance to me, particularly people who have a personal significance to me, and also really prioritizing creative time to paint with others. Typically, when I go to Painting from Life at East Oaks, I will really do my best to try and just leave the painting for that session and really only work from life, especially because in my studio, working from life is much easier than working with a model. And I don't know, there's something that's kind of special about really only working from life as much as I can when I get that opportunity. But on this particular painting, the energy was just different. I could tell that everybody in the room really wanted to capture Polina. Usually during these live stream sessions, we're really chatty. There's banter, there's back and forth, there's conversation, there's answering questions. And this was a live stream where I could really feel the energy of just everyone in the room trying so hard to make the best painting that they could. And I think that yielded a situation where all of us really wanted to keep painting even after we were done for the night. In fact, I got a text from Louis, I think around midnight, showing me his update on his painting. He kept painting off of one of the photo references that he took. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, ugh! I was so energized that it was hard to even get to sleep because I saw all the really great work that he put into his painting. And I really wanted to turn around and do that on my painting too, except I knew that I needed to go to bed and get some sleep. And I think that's another really important component to all of this that's worth talking about. Just that element of maybe feeling a little bit competitive. I don't know, I used to really wonder whether I was a competitive person, and I think if I ever thought I wasn't competitive, it's because I was doing something that I wasn't particularly invested in. But when it comes to something that I do well and I love, I actually really get a competitive thrill out of that. And especially painting somebody that I'm close to, I really, really wanted this to be the best possible painting. And so seeing somebody else put in that extra bit of work that really took the piece to the next level, I immediately wanted to respond in kind. So that's what we're looking at today. This is the second part of me working on this painting. If you want to see the start, I would encourage you to check out Eastokes' YouTube channel. In fact, I will link to that so that you can take a look at the first 3 hours of how this painting unfolded. And then this represents what happened when I took the piece back home. And the way this unfolded is that I would say what I did at Eastokes really helped to lay the groundwork for the looseness in this piece. And then when I came home, I really did the work to confirm the likeness in this portrait. And despite the fact that we're 6 minutes into this video already, that's what we're here to really talk about today. So to kick off, let's talk about this idea of starting loose from the very beginning. This actually harkens back to a conversation I was having with Louis during one of the breaks of the live stream. I noticed that he was approaching his painting differently than I often see him approaching them during these painting from life sessions where we're all working alla prima. And he had explained that typically he really focuses in the very beginning on finding the likeness and getting a really accurate drawing, as accurate as it can be, before proceeding into color. But what happens in trying to get so specific and so accurate in the drawing is that it's really difficult to then start to play with color, play with brushwork, play with the impasto, just because of the way the painting has been built up. And that instead, he was really trying to think of this piece in a different way, where he wanted to play with that brushwork from the very beginning and go straight in with color and find the drawing as he went. And this rang true to me immediately, and I think he beautifully put words to how I typically think of the way that I work in these sessions. I am not going to be the person who has the most meticulous drawing or who spends the longest time on the drawing before going into color. Instead, I really do think in that way, where I want to get some verve in the painting. I want to get that looseness in the painting early. And I really need to be able to trust that I'm going to find the likeness and the accuracy in the drawing as I go. This can be a really tricky way to work. It requires a lot of trust and confidence in your own ability, because you will go through periods where it looks like a mess, or at the very least, you'll go through periods where the likeness isn't there. And you really have to be confident in your ability to find that. And I think this was a big piece of what helped me to get interesting edges or to get some looseness in this particular painting. Because I started by just thinking of these big shapes of color, it was easy for me to have big, bold brushstrokes that, were painting a little bit outside of the line, so to speak. Opportunities where I could really soften or lose some edges and get evocative in what I was doing. By comparison, what you see me do at this stage of the painting, I'm doing a lot of tightening up. I'm getting clarity on exactly where the eye needs to be. I'm doing things like shifting key landmarks of the face and making sure they're in exactly the right spot. And when I'm getting that precise, tightening up is honestly a natural consequence of this. And so I really want to start as loosely as possible in order to be able to balance out some of that tightness that I'm introducing at this stage of the painting. So as I'm going through this stage of the painting, one thing I'm thinking about really proactively is actively leaving parts of the painting alone where I really like the looseness. Sometimes this means leaving things that maybe aren't super accurate, but they're not particularly important to the likeness. Things like the hair and how the hair is going to get lost into the background in some places. Or details like the shirt. I omit a lot of texture that is on her top here, and that's by design. I want there to be some places where I can inject a little bit more of a painterly feeling, where the brushwork can get a little bit bolder. And I need to be discerning about where I can get away with that and where I really don't want to even try. And instead, I really want to let myself get a little bit tighter in order to make sure I get that likeness. And I think one thing that really worked to my advantage here is that I was working from life for the first half of this painting, which again, you can see over on the Eastokes YouTube channel. And then I was working off of the photo reference that Louis took and that, you can access through the East Oaks website, I was working off of that photo for this part of the painting. And working from life, especially the way I was working, I was taking my glasses off. I really couldn't see a lot of tight, small shapes on her face for that early stage. That's really conducive to getting the looseness that you want. By comparison, it's really easy for me to get very tight and very specific in my drawing in order to capture an accurate likeness in this second stage. And I find that that's really helpful because, like I said, my approach to being able to paint this in a painterly way is to go loose early and then tighten up and refine as I go. Now, a second thing that I did here that set me up for success in capturing the likeness without overworking or while preserving some looseness was that I reserved my darks in this piece for as long as I could. So if you took a look at where this painting started, where I left off at the very end of the East Oaks streaming session and where I started this session, you'll notice that my darks are not particularly dark. Notice how light things like the pupils, the shadow side of her hair, even the shadow side of her face, they're all significantly lighter than where they end up. This is not a universal truth or recommendation for portrait painting, but I do find that it's a really useful tool because you can always darken something as you go. But the advantage to keeping those darks a little bit lighter for as long as I can in the painting is that the entire value structure and to a certain extent the color harmony gets really compressed. Everything is closer together. The lightest light and the darkest dark are closer together from the beginning of this painting versus the end. And that makes it easier to lose edges, to soften edges, to see how you can merge really big shapes. It allowed me to see opportunities to let the left side of her face merge a little bit with places where the hair is coming really close to her face because those value relationships were close enough. And I really like disrupting that pattern because it creates a little bit more of a visual rhythm in the piece, as opposed to staying super literal and beholden to my photo reference. If I jumped right in with full contrast from the very beginning, those opportunities to lose or soften edges would really not present themselves anywhere near as clearly. I also find that this approach is really useful if you tend to paint your eyes too bright, if the highlights on the eyes feel too bright. Those are one of the really easy things that can trip us up where our painting can start to feel a little bit cartoonish or we can lose a lifelike quality to our pieces. So I really like this exercise of keeping your values all a little bit higher key and compressed toward the light end of the value spectrum for as long as you can get away with. And I think the final important piece here is that I was not preoccupied with getting that drawing super accurate from the get-go. This really bears reiteration because I think this is an integral part of being able to paint loosely. For comparison, I want you to think back to a time where maybe you started a portrait with a pencil sketch underneath, or you had a grisaille underpainting, and you really wanted that pencil sketch to be as accurate and as detailed as possible. Same thing with the grisaille, but then when you started going in with color and you started to really think of it as a painting, you felt really afraid to loosen up because you didn't want to lose that drawing that you so painstakingly established in the beginning. This is really common. It's common whether you start with pencil or charcoal or you start with an underpainting. Even if you go in alla prima, it can be easy if you think about the drawing as the very first thing to really be concerned with losing that drawing as you start to loosen up. And so flipping this on its head and starting by thinking about the color and the looseness and the really big shapes first, and then finding the small shapes and getting really specific and accurate in your drawing only as you progress through the painting, that can be incredibly helpful, especially when looseness is your goal. But the big caveat here is that you really need to be confident that you can find the drawing. That you can find the drawing in paint, that you can find the drawing once you have color established. And that's not something that you can just flip a switch on. That's something that requires practice. So to be able to work your way up to the point where that is more comfortable or more approachable, I would actually say that there is a stage where working really tight is beneficial. Not to say that you want to start your painting really tightly. In general, we really do want to think about working from big shapes to small whenever we can. But that very tight, even like overworked approach can be really helpful in the beginning to give you that confidence that you can find the drawing. And if that's where you need to be right now, that's okay. I remember asking about, how Richard Schmid achieved likeness in his own work. And the anecdote that I was told from people who knew him really well and studied with him was that he really got his start in a more tight academic way of working. When he had to take a break in his painting career and he was getting back into it, he started with pretty academic studies and then worked back into that looseness. And that was such a breakthrough thing to hear for me, because I just thought, as I'm sure many of you do, that in order to paint in this really bold, expressive way, that's just something that comes from inside of you. But that's not the case. We work up to that. And oftentimes working up to that involves working in a very structured, even potentially rigid way. I think the next thing that you could think about from here is starting to take more of this approach where you find the drawing as you go, but maybe doing that in only black and white, or using a medium that's a little bit more forgiving, like gouache, where the paint is going to dry and you don't have to worry about building up too much paint or creating mud or really losing your value structure because the paint is so wet that you're not able to really control what you're getting on the canvas. But understanding exactly what stage you're at and what exercise is going to be the best fit for you right now is something where a mentor comes in really handy, because they have the experience to know what the one thing is that you really need to focus on that's going to make everything else easier. And they have the experience to know what stage you're at and what's really appropriate, both in terms of your skill level and just how you're doing psychologically. So if that's the sort of thing that you would really benefit from getting that feedback and support around, I would highly encourage you to check out my mentorship. Links down in the description, both to find out more and to apply to see if we are a fit to work together. I hope watching this painting come to life was as much of a joy for you to watch and learn about as it was for me to make. I really appreciate getting to share this with all of you. All right, until next time, happy painting.